He walked out on his dying pregnant wife over baby's gender. 25 years later, he was dying, and his doctor was the daughter he abandoned. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back. Yes, I'm really here. You're Mr. Peter. And no, you're not dreaming. This voice, this heart is back, and today's story is something you'll never forget. But first, let me pray for you, not just your day, but your soul. Dear God, bless every heart listening right now. Surround them with peace that the world can't shake, and joy that doesn't depend on circumstances. Heal the silent battles, answer the quiet prayers, and bring unexpected miracles. Amen. Now listen closely. This isn't just another story. This is a message wrapped in fiction but soaked in truth. And I didn't return just to entertain you. I came back to touch your spirit. So if you're watching right now, don't just watch silently. Tap that like button. Say something in the comments. Share this with someone who needs a reason to smile today, because this family is not like the others. We love deeper, we feel stronger, and when we rise together. Now sit back, breathe deep, and open your heart, because what you're about to hear might just stay with you forever. The man who will abandon his dying wife for giving him a daughter instead of a son is adjusting his platinum cufflinks in the mirror, completely unaware that in 25 years that same daughter will hold his worthless life in her surgeon's hands and never speak a single word to him. A daughter? Stuart Wallace's voice cuts through the penthouse like a blade through silk, each word dripping with the kind of venom that could poison entire bloodlines. After everything I've invested in this pregnancy, everything I've planned for the Wallace legacy, you're carrying a useless daughter. Elaine Keary, 24 and 7 months pregnant, feels her knees buckle as she watches the man she once thought was her fairy tale prince transform into the monster that will haunt her nightmares for decades to come. The ultrasound photos slip from her trembling fingers, floating to the marble floor like autumn leaves. Each image of their healthy baby girl, now evidence of her greatest failure in his eyes. "Stuart, please," she whispers, her ballet-trained voice cracking under the weight of his disappointment. "She's our child. She's perfect." "Perfect?" His bitter laughter echoes off the crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. "A daughter will never run Wallace Industries. A daughter can't carry the family name. A daughter is nothing but a pretty decoration that will cost me millions in wedding expenses before she takes some other man's surname and disappears forever." At 34, Stuart Wallace stands at the pinnacle of American capitalism, his empire worth $50 million and growing by the hour. Every business magazine in Manhattan has featured his ruthless brilliance on their covers. Every socialite in the city would kill for an invitation to his galas. Every investor hangs on his every word like gospel. But tonight, staring at his pregnant wife who dared to disappoint him, he looks like a man whose entire world has crumbled over the revelation of 2 X chromosomes. "My grandfather built this company for his sons," Stuart continues, his voice growing colder with each syllable. "My father expanded it for his sons. My business partners expect a male successor. Our investors believed in the Wallace family legacy, not some little girl who'll play with dolls instead of dominating boardrooms." Elaine's heart shatters as she watches him pace their bedroom like a caged predator, his perfectly tailored Armani suit unable to disguise the ugly truth of what he really is. This is the same man who once knelt in the spotlight of Lincoln Center after her performance as the Sugar Plum Fairy, declaring his love before thousands of witnesses. The same man who promised her that their love would create something beautiful and eternal. "I need air," Stuart mutters, grabbing his jacket. "I'm going to the club. Maybe Tavrix will have some perspective on this situation." The way he says situation makes their unborn daughter sound like a stock market crash or a hostile takeover, something to be managed, minimized, or eliminated entirely. Don't wait up, he adds without looking back, leaving Elaine alone with her growing belly and the devastating realization that the father of her child sees their baby as nothing more than a business failure. 20 minutes later, Stuart strides into the exclusive Meridian Club, where Manhattan's elite gather to make deals that shape the city's economy. The mahogany-paneled walls are lined with portraits of titans of industry, all men, all testament to the patriarchal legacy that Stuart believes is his birthright. "Wallace!" Tavrix Blackwood calls out from the leather chairs near the fireplace. "Come settle a debate. Zerelia here thinks your heir will revolutionize renewable energy. I say he'll stick with traditional oil investments." Stuart's jaw tightens as he approaches his inner circle, the wolves in designer clothing who've helped him build his empire. Zerelia Voss, sharp as a blade and twice as cutting, raises her martini in greeting. Her smile could slice through steel, and her business instincts have made her nearly as wealthy as Stuart himself. "Actually," Stuart says, his voice carefully controlled, "we need to discuss complications." Orlixa Sterling, the society queen whose opinion can make or break reputations, leans forward with predatory interest. Complications. How deliciously mysterious. "The ultrasound revealed some unexpected results," Stuart continues, each word feeling like glass in his throat. "It appears Elaine is carrying a daughter." The silence that follows is deafening. These are people who've weathered financial crashes, hostile takeovers, and international scandals without blinking. But the prospect of Stuart Wallace having a female heir clearly shakes them to their core. A daughter. Zerelia's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arches with something between amusement and horror. "Well, that is unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" Orlixa laughs, the sound like breaking china. "It's a complete disaster. What will the board say? What will the shareholders think? A little girl in pigtails as the future of Wallace Industries?" Tavrix swirls his whiskey thoughtfully. "There are options, of course. Adoption agencies handle these situations discreetly. Or perhaps Elaine could try again quickly." "She's 7 months along," Stuart interrupts, his hands clenching into fists. "It's too late for alternative solutions." "Then you'll have to make the best of a bad situation," Zerelia suggests with the casual cruelty that's made her fortune. "Keep trying for a proper heir. In the meantime, treat this daughter as practice for the real thing." The conversation continues around him, these vultures disguised as friends dissecting his personal catastrophe with the same cold calculation they'd used to discuss quarterly earnings. And with each passing minute, Stuart feels his resentment toward his unborn daughter growing like a cancer in his chest. "A Wallace male could take over the company at 30, Tavrix muses, refilling his glass. "But a daughter? She'll just marry some fortune hunter and hand over our life's work to strangers." "Unless," Orlixa suggests with a cruel smile, "you simply don't acknowledge her. Let someone else raise the mistake while you focus on producing the heir your legacy deserves." The idea plants itself in Stuart's mind like poison taking root. Not acknowledge her. Treat his daughter like she doesn't exist. Remove the problem entirely by refusing to accept responsibility for it. "That's actually brilliant," Zerelia nods approvingly. "No legal obligations, no emotional complications, no disruption to the succession plan. Clean and efficient." "Like any good business decision," Tavrix agrees, raising his glass. "Sometimes you have to cut your losses and move forward." When Stuart finally returns to the penthouse near midnight, he finds Elaine asleep on the sofa, one hand protectively cradling her belly, even in sleep. The ultrasound photos are scattered across the coffee table, and Stuart can see his daughter's profile in the grainy black and white images. Her tiny nose, her delicate features, the way she seems to be sucking her thumb. For just a moment, something stirs in his chest. Something that might have been love, or hope, or the possibility of a different kind of legacy. His daughter, his flesh and blood, The child who could grow up to be anything she wanted to be if he just gave her the chance. But then he remembers Zerelia's words, the board's expectations, and his grandfather's voice echoing from childhood. Wallace men build empires. Wallace women marry into other men's empires and disappear. Stuart picks up the ultrasound photos and, without a sound, drops them into the fireplace. As the flames consume the first images of his daughter, he makes a decision that will haunt 3 lives forever. This child will not be his heir. This child will not be his responsibility. This child will not be his daughter. In 25 years, when Dr. Eliza Keary holds his dying heart in her surgeon's hands and treats him like a complete stranger, Stuart Wallace will finally understand the true cost of treating love like a business transaction. But tonight, watching his daughter's first photos turn to ash, he feels only the cold satisfaction of a man who believes he's solved a problem. He has no idea he's just created a woman who will save his life while refusing to acknowledge his existence, the most perfect revenge the universe could devise. The daughter he's about to call worthless will prove more valuable than his entire empire, and she'll never speak a single word to him. Chapter 2. The cruelty escalates. The cruelest thing about watching someone you love transform into a stranger is that they do it slowly, one heartbreak at a time, until you can't remember why you ever believed they had a soul. And Elaine Keary is about to discover that monsters aren't born, they're made through choices that poison everything they touch. 3 weeks after the ultrasound revelation, Elaine discovers Stuart in his study at 2 in the morning, surrounded by adoption agency brochures and legal documents with headers that make her blood run cold. Voluntary termination of parental rights and private adoption services for unwanted children. Stuart? Her voice barely escapes her throat as she reads the paperwork scattered across his mahogany desk. What is this? He doesn't even look up from his laptop, where dozens of browser tabs display everything from international adoption agencies to boarding schools in Switzerland. Contingency planning, Elaine. Something you'd understand if you'd ever run a business. The word unwanted burns in her chest like acid. Their daughter, the tiny life growing inside her, who kicks and moves and responds to music, reduced to an unwanted problem requiring contingency plans. She's our baby, Elaine whispers, her hands instinctively protecting her belly. How can you call her unwanted? Finally, Stuart looks up, and the coldness in his eyes makes her feel like she's staring into an Arctic wasteland. I never wanted a daughter, Elaine. I made that clear from the beginning. A Wallace heir must be male, or there's no point in having children at all. The casual brutality of his words hits her like a physical blow. This is the same man who once told her that their love would create miracles. Now he's researching how to dispose of the miracle currently growing in her womb. You're talking about giving away our child, she says, each word a struggle against the sobs threatening to escape. Our flesh and blood. I'm talking about practical solutions to an impractical situation. Stuart's voice carries the same tone he uses in board meetings when discussing failed investments. The Ashworth Agency handles discreet placements for families like ours, wealthy couples who desperately want daughters. She'd have every advantage, except her real parents. I won't be her real parent, Elaine. I can't love something that represents the failure of everything I've built. The next morning brings fresh horrors disguised as normal life. Stuart hires an interior designer to redo the nursery, a woman named Kalira Vantage, whose smile is as artificial as her platinum hair and whose first question makes Elaine's heart stop. So, Mr. Wallace tells me we're preparing for a boy, Kalira chirps, pulling out fabric samples in blues and greys. I'm thinking a future CEO theme, miniature boardroom furniture, perhaps a crib shaped like a conference table. Elaine stares at Stuart in disbelief. You told her we're having a son. I told her we're decorating for my heir, Stuart replies smoothly. The rest is semantics. As Kalira chatters about executive baby themes and displays paint samples that scream masculine power, Elaine realizes that Stuart isn't just rejecting their daughter. He's erasing her from existence before she's even born. In his mind, she simply doesn't exist. The cruelty escalates daily. Stuart removes all the maternity photos from their frames, claiming the temporary condition doesn't need to be documented. He cancels the baby shower that Elaine's ballet friends were planning, telling everyone that they're waiting until after delivery for health reasons. He even has his assistant, Mirellen Hayes, send out pregnancy announcements that carefully avoid mentioning the baby's gender, referring only to the future Wallace heir. But the worst comes during a dinner party 2 weeks later, when Stuart's inner circle arrives for their monthly gathering. Elaine, now 8 months pregnant and exhausted from sleepless nights of crying, tries to play the perfect hostess despite feeling like she's drowning in her own home. "Elaine, darling, you look positively radiant," lies Orlixa Sterling, air-kissing her cheeks while obviously studying her swollen face and tired eyes. Simply glowing with the joy of carrying Stuart's son. The pointed emphasis on son makes it clear that Stuart's circle knows the truth and has chosen to participate in his delusion. They've all agreed to pretend that Elaine is carrying a boy, that their daughter is somehow a mistake that can be corrected through collective denial. "Actually," Elaine begins, but Stuart's hand clamps down on her wrist with enough pressure to bruise. "Actually, we're just grateful for a healthy pregnancy," he interrupts smoothly. "Aren't we, darling?" Zerelia Voss, resplendent in a dress that costs more than most people's cars, settles into her chair with predatory grace. "I've been thinking about godparents for your son, Stuart. Tavrix and I would be honored to guide him through the complexities of inherited wealth." "How thoughtful," Elaine manages, though every word feels like swallowing glass. They're planning her daughter's future while simultaneously denying her existence, treating her like a business merger that needs the right connections and influences. Tavrix Blackwood raises his wineglass in a toast. "To the future king of Wallace Industries. May he be everything his father dreamed of." As the glasses clink around the table, Elaine feels something break inside her chest. These people are toasting her unborn daughter while openly wishing she were someone else entirely. They're celebrating a boy who doesn't exist while treating the girl who does as an embarrassing mistake. "The succession planning is already in motion," Stuart announces, his voice carrying the pride of a man discussing his greatest achievement. "My son will be groomed from birth to take over the company. No sentiment, no weakness, just pure business instinct. What if the child shows artistic tendencies like her mother?" asks Lunethra Ashford, Elaine's former ballet partner who has remained loyal despite Stuart's obvious disapproval of their friendship. The silence that follows is deafening. Lunethra's use of her instead of him creates a tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. "My heir," Stuart says coldly, emphasizing each word, "will be trained in business, not frivolous pursuits. Art is a hobby for people who can't handle real responsibility." The insult hits Elaine like a slap. Her ballet career, her artistic soul, everything that made her who she was before Stuart, dismissed as frivolous and irresponsible. "If you'll excuse me," Elaine whispers, pushing back from the table, "I need some air." She flees to the balcony, where the city lights blur through her tears. Below, Manhattan sparkles like scattered diamonds, but all she can see is the cold, glittering future Stuart is planning for their family, a future where their daughter has no place. "There you are." Lunethra appears beside her, concern written across her delicate features. "I saw you leave the table. Are you all right?" "They're planning to erase her, Lunethra," Elaine whispers, her voice breaking. "They talk about the heir and the son, like my daughter is just a placeholder until the real child arrives." Lunethra wraps her arms around her friend, feeling the tremors that shake Elaine's entire body. Have you thought about leaving? You have options, Elaine. You don't have to stay here and endure this. Leave with what? He controls everything. The bank accounts, the properties, even my career contracts. He made sure of that when we married. Elaine's laugh is bitter as winter wind. He owns me, Lunethra. And if I try to leave, he'll destroy me and take her away. His lawyers could prove I'm an unfit mother just by pointing to my financial dependence. Through the glass doors, they can hear Stuart's voice growing louder as the wine flows freely. The Wallace legacy is everything, he's saying. It's built on strength, vision, and the right bloodline. A daughter simply can't carry that forward. Surely she could marry well, suggests Orlixa. Transfer the legacy through her husband? And lose the Wallace name forever? Never. Stuart's voice carries the finality of a judge's gavel. No. If this pregnancy doesn't produce a son, we'll have to try again, immediately. Elaine's hands fly to her belly, protecting her daughter from words that feel like physical blows. The idea that Stuart sees her as nothing more than a breeding vessel for the correct child makes her feel sick. I won't let him hurt her, she whispers to Lunethra, her voice gaining strength from somewhere deep inside. I don't know how, but I won't let him treat our daughter like she's worthless. Inside, the dinner party continues with its toxic toasts and cruel laughter. Zerelia suggests naming the future heir after Stuart's grandfather, while Tavrix discusses elite boarding schools that will shape him into a proper businessman. They're dividing up her daughter's life like shareholders splitting profits, each decision made without considering that she's a human being who deserves love rather than strategic planning. When do you think he'll start showing business aptitude? Orlixa asks, her voice carrying the casual interest of someone discussing livestock breeding. Early, Stuart replies confidently. I'll have him in the boardroom by age 5, learning to read financial statements instead of fairy tales. The conversation continues, these vultures mapping out a future that erases everything Elaine holds dear. They speak of crushing creativity, eliminating sentiment, and molding a child into nothing more than a business-generating machine. As Elaine stands on the balcony, feeling her daughter move restlessly in her womb, as if sensing the toxicity surrounding her, she makes a promise that will sustain her through the darkest times ahead. I will love you enough for both of us, baby girl. And someday, when you're strong enough to understand, I'll tell you that your worth was never determined by his expectations. But even as she speaks the words, Elaine can feel her strength ebbing away like water through a broken dam. The stress, the constant emotional warfare, the knowledge that the man she loves sees their child as a mistake, it's all taking a toll that goes far beyond the physical. In 1 week, when labor comes early and complications threaten both their lives, Elaine will discover just how prophetic those words truly are. Tonight, she can only hold her belly and whisper apologies to the daughter who deserves so much better than the family preparing to reject her. Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. There are moments in life when evil reveals itself so completely that you can actually feel your soul breaking, like glass shattering in slow motion, until nothing remains but sharp edges that will cut you forever. And for Elaine Curie, that moment comes when she realizes the man she loves would rather destroy their family than accept their daughter. The final breaking point arrives on a Tuesday morning when Elaine finds Stuart standing in what was supposed to be their daughter's nursery, watching 2 men dismantle the crib she had carefully chosen with love and hope 3 months ago. "What are you doing?" she gasps, her 8.5-month pregnant belly making it difficult to breathe as panic floods her system. Stuart doesn't even turn around. "Converting this room back to a home office. I need the space for my expanding business operations." The casual way he says it, like he's discussing rearranging furniture instead of destroying their daughter's first home, makes Elaine feel like she's falling through ice into freezing water. The rocking chair where she'd planned to nurse their baby sits abandoned in the corner, while the mobile of dancing ballerinas that had made her cry with joy now lies dismantled in a cardboard box marked "Storage." "Stuart, I'm due in 2 weeks," she whispers, her voice barely audible above the sound of screwdrivers and her own breaking heart. Where will she sleep? Finally, he turns to face her, and the expression in his eyes is colder than death itself. "That's not my concern anymore, Elaine. I've made other arrangements." The words hit her like physical blows. Other arrangements, as if their daughter is a business problem he's outsourced to someone else. What other arrangements? Fear makes her voice crack, but she forces herself to ask, even though she's terrified of the answer. Stuart signals the workman to take a break and closes the door behind them. When they're alone, his mask of public civility finally falls away completely, revealing the monster that's been growing inside him for months. "I've spoken with the Ashworth Agency," he says, his voice carrying the same tone he'd used to discuss a stock transaction. "They have a couple in Switzerland, wealthy, desperate for a daughter, willing to pay handsomely for private adoption. The paperwork is already prepared." Elaine's knees buckle and she grabs the doorframe to keep from collapsing. "You want to sell our baby?" "I want to solve a problem before it destroys everything I've built." Stuart straightens his tie with the same casual indifference he'd show after firing an incompetent employee. The Moreaus are excellent people, old money, impeccable reputation. She'd want for nothing. Except her mother. "You're not thinking clearly, Elaine. This is business. The Wallace legacy requires a male heir. What you're carrying is a genetic mistake that needs to be corrected." A genetic mistake. Their daughter, the baby who responds to Elaine's voice by kicking, who moves to music, who hiccups when Elaine eats spicy food, reduced to a genetic mistake in Stuart's cold calculation. "I won't sign any papers," Elaine says, her voice gaining strength from somewhere deep inside her. "You can't make me give her away." Stuart's laugh is like breaking glass. "Can't I? Let's examine your options, shall we? You have no money of your own. I control every account. You have no career. Your ballet days are over thanks to the pregnancy complications. You have no family support. Your parents disowned you when you chose me over their concerns. So tell me, darling, exactly how do you plan to raise a child with no resources, no income, and no support system?" Each word is precisely calculated to destroy what's left of her confidence, and they hit their mark with devastating accuracy. Elaine knows he's right about her financial helplessness. She'd been so blinded by love that she'd signed every document he'd put in front of her, never realizing she was signing away her independence along with her heart. "I'll find a way," she whispers, but even to her own ears, the words sound hollow. "Will you? Because I've also prepared alternative documentation." Stuart reaches into his suit jacket and pulls out a manila folder. "These papers declare you mentally unfit to care for a child. Dr. Velina Astoria at Celestial Heart Hospital has already agreed to testify about your emotional instability during prenatal visits. Apparently, all that crying and anxiety could be interpreted as severe postpartum depression requiring immediate intervention. The betrayal cuts deeper than any knife." Dr. Astoria, the woman Elaine had trusted with her fears and tears, willing to twist their confidential conversations into weapons against her. She wouldn't, she would. For enough money, anyone will say anything. Stuart's smile is pure predator. "So you see, darling, your choices are simple. Sign the adoption papers voluntarily, or lose her anyway when the court declares you unfit and awards custody to someone more suitable." Elaine feels the room spinning around her, the walls closing in like a trap. This man she'd loved, who she'd given everything to, has spent months methodically destroying every avenue of escape, every possibility of keeping their daughter. He's not just rejecting their child, he's orchestrating the complete annihilation of their family. "You're a monster," she breathes, the words escaping before she can stop them. "I'm a businessman who doesn't let emotions interfere with practical decisions." Stuart checks his Rolex with the casual indifference of someone discussing the weather. "The adoption agency expects an answer by Friday. I suggest you use the time to make peace with reality." That afternoon, Zerelia Voss arrives with fabric samples and color swatches, ostensibly to help finalize the nursery design. But Elaine quickly realizes this is Stuart's final psychological assault, forcing her to participate in decorating a room for the son he wants, instead of accepting the daughter she's carrying. "I'm thinking a sophisticated masculine palette," Zerelia announces, spreading navy and gold samples across the dismantled crib. "Something that says future CEO rather than adorable baby. After all, we're preparing for the Wallace heir, not some ordinary child." The emphasis on heir is like acid poured into an open wound. Elaine watches this woman, who has never carried a child, never felt the miracle of life growing inside her, casually redesigning the space that was supposed to welcome their daughter into the world. "These navy curtains would be perfect," Zerelia continues, holding up fabric that looks more appropriate for a corporate boardroom than a nursery, and perhaps a crib in dark mahogany, something masculine and powerful. Elaine can't take it anymore. The months of psychological torture, the systematic destruction of her dreams, the casual erasure of her daughter's existence, it all crashes down on her at once. "Actually," she says quietly, her voice gaining strength from desperation, "we're having a daughter." The silence that follows is deafening. Zerelia's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arches with something between surprise and disgust, while Stuart's face goes completely white with rage. "Elaine," he warns, his voice low and dangerous. "A beautiful, healthy daughter," Elaine continues, past caring about consequences. "She moves to music. She responds to my voice. She's going to be amazing." Zerelia sets down the fabric samples with the careful precision of someone handling explosives. "How unexpected. Well, I suppose we could adapt the design for a temporary occupant. Temporary occupant. As if their daughter is a house guest who'll be leaving shortly, rather than Stuart's child who should be welcomed with joy." "She's not temporary," Elaine says, her voice rising. "She's permanent. She's ours. She's wanted and loved, and she's a mistake," Stuart explodes, his carefully maintained composure finally shattering. "A useless, expensive mistake that will cost me everything I've worked for. The board expects a male heir. My investors expect continuity. You've failed at the one job you had, giving me a son." The words hang in the air like poison gas, contaminating everything they touch. Zerelia looks between them with the fascinated horror of someone watching a car crash, while Elaine feels something fundamental breaking inside her chest. "Get out," Elaine whispers, her hands protectively covering her belly. "Both of you, get out of my daughter's room." Stuart's face contorts with fury. "Your daughter. This is my house, my money, my decision. You have no rights here. I have the right to protect my child from monsters who see her as a business failure." The stress, the months of emotional abuse, the devastating realization that the man she loves would rather destroy their family than accept their daughter, it all crashes down on Elaine at once. Sharp pain explodes across her abdomen, doubling her over with an intensity that steals her breath. "Oh God," she gasps, feeling wetness spreading down her legs. The baby, something's wrong. But Stuart doesn't move to help her. Instead, he checks his watch again and turns to Zerelia with cold calculation. "Call the adoption agency," he says, as Elaine collapses to her knees in agony. Tell them we'll need an immediate placement." "Stuart!" Elaine screams as another contraction rips through her body. "Help me! The baby's coming!" "The problem is solving itself," he replies, with the emotional detachment of a man discussing a minor business setback. "Zeralia, also call my lawyer. I want those mental incompetency papers ready to file." As contractions tear through her body 3 weeks early, Elaine realizes with crystal clarity that she's not just fighting for her daughter's life. She's fighting against a man who has become so consumed by his own twisted vision of legacy that he's willing to sacrifice everything human and decent to achieve it. Through the pain, she hears Lunethra's voice calling her name, having arrived for their planned lunch and found the door unlocked. Thank God for true friends who don't abandon you when you need them most. "Elaine, what happened? We need to get you to the hospital." As Lunethra helps her toward the elevator, Elaine catches one last glimpse of Stuart standing in the destroyed nursery, discussing adoption timelines with Zeralia as if his wife and child aren't fighting for their lives 20 feet away. The man who should be rushing her to the hospital is planning how to dispose of their child before she's even born. In the ambulance, as contractions threaten to tear her apart, Elaine makes a promise that will sustain her through everything that's coming. "Hold on, baby girl. Mommy's going to protect you from the monster who should have been your father." But she has no idea that in a few hours, Stuart Wallace will prove that there are depths of cruelty she hasn't even imagined yet. The breaking point has become the beginning of labor, of abandonment, and of a love story between mother and daughter that will prove stronger than any man's rejection. Chapter 4. The Abandonment. The difference between a man and a monster is what he does when the woman he claims to love is dying in front of him, and Stuart Wallace is about to prove which one he truly is, creating a wound so deep that his daughter will choose silence over acknowledgement for the rest of his life. "Push, Elaine! I can see the head!" Dr. Marcus Chen shouts over the chaos of machines beeping frantically and nurses rushing around the delivery room at Celestial Heart Hospital. "Your daughter is almost here!" Elaine screams as another contraction tears through her body, her strength nearly depleted after 12 hours of emergency labor. Blood soaks the sheets beneath her as complications mount. Her blood pressure is dangerously low, her heart rate erratic, and the baby is showing signs of distress from the premature birth. "Where's Stuart?" she gasps, between contractions, her eyes frantically searching the delivery room. "He should be here. He promised he'd be here." Nurse Vailina Astoria exchanges a meaningful look with Dr. Hayes. They both know that Stuart Wallace has been pacing the hallway for hours, not out of concern for his wife and child, but because he's terrified of what he might have to face. Every time they've asked him to come in and support Elaine, he's found another excuse to avoid the moment of truth. Mr. Wallace is handling some business calls. Vailina lies gently, unwilling to tell a woman in labor that her husband cares more about stock prices than her survival. "Let's focus on getting your baby here safely." Another push, another scream that echoes off the sterile walls, and suddenly the room fills with the most beautiful sound in the world. A baby's first cry, tiny, fierce, and absolutely perfect. "She's here," Dr. Hayes announces, lifting the smallest, most miraculous human being Elaine has ever seen. A beautiful baby girl. Through her exhaustion and pain, Elaine feels her heart explode with a love so powerful it defies description. Her daughter, red-faced and screaming, covered in the evidence of their shared struggle, but absolutely perfect in every way that matters. "Let me see her," Elaine whispers, reaching out with trembling arms. "Let me hold my baby girl." But even as Vailina places the tiny bundle in her arms, Dr. Chen's expression grows grave. "Elaine, you're bleeding heavily. We need to take care of you immediately." The world starts spinning as Elaine's blood pressure plummets. Her vision blurs, her grip on consciousness loosening, but she forces herself to focus on her daughter's face. memorizing every tiny feature in case these are their only moments together. "She's beautiful," she whispers, pressing a kiss to the baby's downy head. "My little fighter, my precious girl." Outside in the hallway, Stuart Wallace sits in a leather chair that costs more than most people's monthly salaries, his phone pressed to his ear as he discusses quarterly projections with his assistant. To any observer, he looks like a successful businessman handling urgent matters during a minor inconvenience. "Yes, reschedule the Tokyo meeting for Thursday," he says coldly, as if his wife isn't fighting for her life 20 feet away. "And make sure the Ashworth agency knows we'll need that Swiss contact immediately." "Mr. Wallace?" Vailina Astoria appears in the doorway, her scrub stained with blood and her expression grave. "Your wife has given birth to your daughter. They both need you right now." Stuart's jaw tightens as he ends the call. The moment he's been dreading has finally arrived. The moment when he'll have to look at the child who represents everything he never wanted. "Is it definitely a girl?" he asks, his voice devoid of any emotion that might be mistaken for parental concern. "She's a beautiful, healthy baby girl," Vailina confirms, unable to hide her confusion at his strange question. "And your wife is in critical condition. The bleeding—" "How critical?" Stuart interrupts, his business mind immediately calculating the implications. "Life-threatening. She needs emergency surgery, and she's been asking for you constantly." Stuart stands slowly, adjusting his cufflinks with the same mechanical precision he uses for every other mundane task. For a moment, Vailina thinks she sees something human flicker in his eyes, a spark of the man who once claimed to love Elaine enough to move mountains for her. But then his expression hardens into cold marble, and she realizes she was wrong. There's nothing human left in Stuart Wallace. "Show me the baby first," he says, his voice carrying the tone of a man inspecting merchandise rather than meeting his daughter. Vailina leads him into the delivery room where Dr. Hayes is working frantically to stabilize Elaine. The scene is controlled chaos. Machines beeping warnings, nurses rushing with bags of blood for transfusion, and in the middle of it all, a tiny bassinet holding the smallest person Stuart has ever seen. His daughter. She's sleeping now, exhausted from her journey into the world, her tiny fists curled next to her face like she's already ready to fight whatever challenges life might bring. Even at just hours old, she has Elaine's delicate features and Stuart's stubborn chin. She's perfect in every way except the one that matters to him. She's female. "Mr. Wallace," Dr. Chen calls out urgently, "we need to get your wife to surgery immediately. Say goodbye quickly." Stuart looks down at Elaine, who, despite her critical condition, is watching him with eyes full of desperate hope. She still believes that seeing their daughter will transform him, that love will conquer his obsession with legacy and control. "Stuart," she whispers, her voice barely audible above the medical chaos, "isn't she beautiful? Our little girl is so perfect." For one moment, one single crystalline moment, Stuart Wallace stares into the face of the woman who gave up everything for him and the child who could have been his greatest joy. The choice stretches before him like a crossroads. He can choose love over legacy, humanity over pride, family over the cold pursuit of power. He can choose to be a father instead of a monster. Instead, he steps back from Elaine's bedside with the mechanical precision of a man shutting down a failed business operation. "What's her name?" Dr. Chen asks, preparing the birth certificate paperwork. "For the official records?" Stuart's expression doesn't change as he delivers the words that will haunt 3 lives forever. "I don't have a daughter." The room goes silent, except for the beeping machines and Elaine's sharp intake of breath that sounds like her soul breaking. "Stuart, please," she gasps, her voice breaking with desperation. "Don't do this. She needs her father." "A Wallace heir must be male," Stuart says with the coldness of winter itself. Since this child doesn't meet that requirement, she's not my responsibility. He turns and walks toward the door, each step echoing like gunshots in the deadly quiet room. Violina Astoria, who has witnessed thousands of births and thought she'd seen every possible human reaction, feels something die inside her chest as she watches a man abandon his family with less emotion than he'd show cancelling a dinner reservation. "Mr. Wallace," she calls out, running after him as he strides down the hallway. "You can't do this. Your wife is dying. Your daughter needs you." Stuart stops and turns, his face a mask of such complete indifference that Violina actually takes a step backward. "I never wanted a daughter," he says with the finality of a judge pronouncing a death sentence. "She's not my child, and Elaine's condition is no longer my concern. My lawyers will contact the hospital about arrangements." "Arrangements?" Violina's voice cracks with disbelief. "She's your baby, your flesh and blood. She's a mistake that I refuse to compound by taking responsibility for it." Stuart checks his Rolex with the casual indifference of a man discussing the weather. "The Ashworth agency will handle placement. Send them the paperwork." He walks away then, leaving behind the sound of Elaine's heartbroken sobs echoing from the delivery room, and a baby girl who will grow up never knowing that her first act in this world was to be rejected by the man who should have protected her with his life. In the delivery room, as surgeons fight to save Elaine's life, Violina Astoria looks down at the tiny baby who has just been abandoned by her father. Something fierce and protective rises in her chest as she makes a promise that will echo through the next 25 years. "Your daddy walked away, little one, but we won't. We'll make sure you and your mama have everything you need." She writes Eliza Hope Keary on the birth certificate, Elaine's choice whispered between contractions, a name that means God's promise and represents everything good that can come from the worst circumstances. 8 hours later, after surgery saves Elaine's life, mother and daughter are alone in a hospital room with nothing but each other and a love that will prove stronger than any man's rejection. "It's okay, baby girl," Elaine whispers to her sleeping daughter, her voice still weak but filled with fierce determination. "Daddy may have walked away, but Mommy will never leave you. Never." Outside, Stuart Wallace's limousine disappears into the night, carrying away the last chance for redemption he'll ever have. He has no idea that the daughter he just rejected will grow up to become the most accomplished cardiac surgeon in the city, or that in 25 years she'll hold his worthless life in her hands and choose to save him without speaking a single word of acknowledgement. Tonight, he feels only the cold satisfaction of a man who believes he's just solved a problem. But Eliza Hope Keary will spend the next 25 years proving that some problems solve themselves, and that the daughter he called worthless will become more valuable than anything he ever built. The silence she'll maintain in his presence won't be weakness. It will be the most powerful statement she could ever make. "You had your chance to know me. You chose to walk away. Now I choose not to know you." Chapter 5. Survival Mode. The most beautiful thing about humans is our ability to transform devastation into determination, heartbreak into hope, and the worst betrayal imaginable into the fiercest love the world has ever known. And Elaine Keary is about to prove that mothers are capable of miracles that would make angels weep with admiration. 4 days after giving birth, Elaine sits in the discharge area of Celestial Heart Hospital, holding her daughter, now officially named Eliza Hope Keary, while staring at a bill that exceeds most people's annual salaries. Her recovery has been complicated by infection and blood loss, but the hospital needs the bed, and her insurance, which Stuart cancelled the moment he walked out, won't cover another day. "Mrs. Keary," says Arisha Kane, the hospital administrator whose job it is to collect money from people who have none, "we need to discuss payment arrangements for your medical expenses. Elaine looks down at the number circled in red at the bottom of the bill. $127,000. 4 days of emergency care, surgery, and NICU treatment for Eliza's premature birth complications. It might as well be $4 million for all the hope she has of paying it. "I don't have this money," Elaine says quietly, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. My ex-husband controls all our assets. I have nothing. Perhaps family assistance? A credit card? Any form of collateral?" Elaine almost laughs at the bitter irony. Her parents disowned her when she chose Stuart over their warnings about his character. Her ballet career is over thanks to complications from the pregnancy. Her bank accounts show a balance of $47.83. Everything she had left after Stuart's lawyers froze her access to their joint accounts. "I'll find a way to pay," she promises, knowing it's a lie, but needing to say something that might buy her time. "I just need a payment plan." Arisha's expression softens slightly as she looks at this young woman who survived abandonment and near death to protect her baby. "We can arrange monthly payments, but Mrs. Keary, I have to be honest. With no income and no assets, you're looking at a lifetime of debt." A lifetime of debt. The words echo in Elaine's mind as she signs papers that will haunt her for decades, officially accepting responsibility for bills that would cripple most families. But as she feels Eliza's tiny hand wrap around her finger, she knows she'd sign 1,000 such documents to keep her daughter safe. The next few hours bring a series of realizations that feel like falling down an endless well. The penthouse apartment, Stuart's name only, the car, leased through his company, her credit cards, cancelled, her phone, disconnected. Even her clothes and jewelry are considered gifts that can be reclaimed by his legal team. "Where will you go?" asks Lunethra Ashford, who arrives to find Elaine sitting on a hospital bench with nothing but a diaper bag and the clothes she wore during labor 4 days ago. "I don't know," Elaine admits, the enormity of her situation finally hitting her. "I literally have nowhere to go and nothing to my name except her." Lunethra doesn't hesitate. "You're coming home with me. Your apartment is barely big enough for 1 person. Then we'll make it big enough for 3. Lunethra's voice carries the fierce loyalty that only true friendship can produce. "We're dancers, Elaine. We know how to make something beautiful out of nothing." Lunethra's studio apartment in the village is everything the penthouse wasn't: tiny, cramped, and absolutely filled with love. They set up Eliza's bassinet in the corner next to the window, where morning light streams in like hope made visible. For the first time in months, Elaine feels safe. But safety doesn't pay bills or buy baby formula. Within a week, Elaine begins the most humbling journey of her life. Her first job is cleaning office buildings at night, work she can do while Eliza sleeps in a carrier strapped to her chest. She earns $8.50 an hour and comes home each morning covered in dust and exhaustion, but with enough money to buy diapers and formula for another day. "You don't have to do this," Lunethra says, watching Elaine prepare for another night of scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans. "I can support us for a while longer." "I won't be a burden," Elaine replies, adjusting the baby carrier that's become like a second skin. "And I won't raise her to believe that others should solve our problems." The second job comes a month later, waitressing at an all-night diner near the hospital. The tips are better, but the work is harder, and some customers treat her like she's invisible. She learns to smile while men dismiss her as just a waitress, and women judge her for working with a baby strapped to her back. "Honey, you can't bring that baby in here every night," warns Nairo Van Cross, the night manager whose perpetual scowl makes him look like he's personally offended by joy itself. "This is a restaurant, not a daycare." "She doesn't make noise," Elaine pleads, knowing this job is the difference between survival and catastrophe. "She sleeps through my whole shift. Please, I need this work." Nairavan looks at this young woman who's clearly doing everything possible to provide for her child, and something almost human flickers in his expression. One complaint from a customer, and you're both out. Understood? Understood. The third job comes when Eliza is 6 months old, and Elaine realizes that even working 18 hours a day isn't enough to cover rent, utilities, medical bills, and basic necessities. She begins tutoring ballet to children in Central Park on weekends, teaching grace and beauty to kids whose parents can afford lessons while her own daughter watches from a blanket nearby. "Mommy dances like an angel," whispers one little girl to her mother after Elaine demonstrates a perfect grand jeté despite not having proper ballet shoes anymore. "She's very talented," the mother agrees. "I wonder why she's teaching in the park instead of a real studio." Elaine pretends not to hear the conversation, but later, as she counts the $40 earned from 3 hours of teaching, she feels something break and rebuild inside her chest. She may not have Stuart's money or society's respect, but she has something infinitely more valuable: the absolute love of her daughter and the growing certainty that she's raising a child who will know the value of hard work and genuine accomplishment. The hardest moment comes when Eliza is 8 months old and develops a respiratory infection that requires hospitalization. Elaine sits in the same emergency room where she gave birth, holding her feverish daughter while facing another impossible medical bill. "The infection is treatable," explains Dr. Kavor Thorne, the attending physician whose gentle manner can't disguise the serious nature of Eliza's condition. "But she'll need to stay here for at least a week, possibly longer." "I can't afford," Elaine begins, but Dr. Thorne holds up a hand. "Mrs. Keary, some of us remember what happened when your daughter was born. What her father did." His voice carries quiet anger at the memory. "This hospital has a sliding scale payment program for cases like yours. Your daughter will receive the best possible care, and we'll work out a manageable payment plan." Elaine cries then, tears of relief, gratitude, and the overwhelming realization that kindness still exists in a world that often seems designed to crush hope. Nurse Vailina Astoria, who has watched this young mother's struggles with growing admiration, brings her coffee and a sandwich. "How do you do it?" Vailina asks quietly. "How do you stay so strong?" Elaine looks at her sleeping daughter, whose tiny hand is wrapped around her finger even in illness. "I look at her, and I remember that she didn't choose any of this. She deserves a mother who fights for her, not one who gives up because things get hard." As Eliza recovers and grows stronger, so does Elaine's determination to build something lasting from the ashes of her old life. She enrolls in night classes for art therapy certification, studying while Eliza sleeps and finding that her own trauma gives her insight into healing others. "Art saved me," she tells her instructor, Sinara Wild, during a particularly challenging session about childhood abandonment. "When everything else was taken away, I could still create something beautiful. I want to help other people find that same healing." By Eliza's first birthday, they've moved into their own tiny apartment, nothing like the penthouse, but theirs by right of rent, paid with honest work. Elaine has 3 steady jobs, is halfway through her certification program, and has managed to make the first payment on those crushing medical bills. "Look what Mommy bought you," she whispers to Eliza, showing her the small cupcake that represents a major splurge from their carefully managed budget. "Your very first birthday cake." Eliza claps her tiny hands and says, "Mama," for the first time, and Elaine knows with absolute certainty that every hour of exhaustion, every moment of fear, every sacrifice has been worth it to hear that single word spoken with such pure love. The years continue with their rhythm of struggle and small victories. Eliza grows from a toddler who takes her first steps in their cramped kitchen to a school-age child who excels in every subject while helping her mother organize art supplies for therapy sessions. She never asks about her father because Elaine has made their family of 2 feel complete and whole. "Why don't I have a daddy?" Eliza asks when she's 7, the question prompted by a school project about families. "Because some people aren't strong enough to handle the responsibility of loving someone like you," Elaine answers honestly. "But that just means we get to love each other twice as much." By the time Eliza turns 10, Elaine has completed her certification and opened a small art therapy practice specializing in abandonment trauma. Her clients are children and adults who understand what it feels like to be discarded by people who should have loved them unconditionally. "My mommy helps people fix their broken hearts," Eliza explains to her teacher during a presentation about parents' careers. She says art can heal anything. Elaine watches from the back of the classroom, her heart swelling with pride as her daughter speaks with confidence and compassion about healing and hope. This remarkable child, who was rejected before birth, has become a source of light in everyone's life she touches. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" the teacher asks. "A doctor," Eliza responds without hesitation. "I want to save people's hearts the way my mommy saves their feelings." That night, as she tucks Eliza into the bed they bought second-hand, but painted with flowers that would make any palace jealous, Elaine makes a promise that will guide every decision for the next 15 years. "I will give you everything that matters, baby girl. Not money or status or things that can be taken away, but strength and kindness and the knowledge that you are worth more than all the gold in the world." Outside their window, Manhattan glitters with the wealth and power that once seemed so important. But inside their small apartment, a mother and daughter are building something far more valuable than any empire. They're building a love that will prove strong enough to heal even the deepest wounds and brave enough to face any challenge. In 15 years, when Dr. Eliza Keary stands over her father's dying body, she'll carry with her every lesson from these early struggles, and the unshakable knowledge that real strength comes not from what you're given, but from what you choose to build with your own 2 hands. The daughter Stuart Wallace called worthless has been forged into something priceless, and she owes him nothing for it. Chapter 6. Building from Ashes. The most extraordinary people are forged in the fires of impossible circumstances, and by the time Eliza Keary turns 15, she has already become living proof that diamonds are created under pressure, while her mother has transformed from a broken ballet dancer into a force of nature that could reshape the world with nothing but love and determination. "Mama, you got the letter!" Eliza bursts through the door of their small but immaculately kept apartment, waving an envelope from the New York State Board of Certification like it's made of pure gold. Elaine looks up from the easel where she's been working on a painting for her latest art therapy client, an 8-year-old boy whose father walked out, leaving behind wounds that only creative expression seems able to heal. The irony isn't lost on her that she's spending her days helping children process abandonment while raising a daughter who could teach masterclasses in resilience. The letter. Elaine's heart pounds as she sets down her brush. 15 years of working toward this moment, crystallizing into a single envelope that will determine their future. Eliza tears it open with the dramatic flair she inherited from her mother's ballet background, then screams with joy that could shatter windows. "You passed. You're officially certified. Dr. Elaine Keary, licensed art therapist." The title sounds like music. Not just because it represents professional recognition, but because it's the first thing in 15 years that belongs entirely to Elaine. No one gave it to her. No one can take it away. She earned it through night classes while Eliza slept, clinical hours squeezed between waitressing shifts, and a determination that grew stronger with every small victory. "We did it, baby girl," Elaine whispers, wrapping her daughter in a hug that contains 15 years of struggle, sacrifice, and unshakable love. "We actually did it." "Of course we did," Eliza says, with the absolute confidence of a teenager who has never known anything but a mother who makes miracles happen through sheer willpower. "You're the strongest person in the world, Mama. I never doubted we'd get here." That evening, they celebrate with Chinese takeout from their favorite restaurant, the same place where Elaine worked as a delivery driver during Eliza's middle school years. The owner, Mrs. Chen, insisted on giving them the food free when she heard about Elaine's certification. "You good mother," Mrs. Chen had said, pressing the containers into Elaine's hands despite her protests. "You work so hard, make beautiful daughter. You deserve celebration." As they eat lo mein with plastic forks in their tiny kitchen, Elaine marvels at how rich their life feels despite having so little in material terms. The walls are covered with Eliza's academic awards, art projects they've created together, and photographs documenting 15 years of building something beautiful from nothing. "Tell me the story again," Eliza requests, curling up next to her mother on their second-hand couch that they've made comfortable with handmade pillows and throws. "Which story?" Elaine asks, though she knows exactly which one Eliza means. "The one about how I got my name." It's a ritual they've shared since Eliza was old enough to understand words, the story of how she got her name, carefully edited to focus on hope rather than heartbreak. "I named you Eliza Hope," Elaine begins, her voice taking on the cadence of a fairy tale. "Because even when everything seemed impossible, even when I was scared and alone, I looked at your beautiful face and knew that as long as you were with me, there would always be hope." What she doesn't say, what Eliza is still too young to hear, is that she chose the name Eliza because it sounds nothing like Elizabeth, nothing like Elaine, nothing that would remind anyone of the abandoned wife and daughter of Stuart Wallace. She created a new identity for both of them, leaving behind the people who were disposable and becoming the people who were unbreakable. "And why don't I have a father?" Eliza asks, the question she's been asking in various forms for years. Elaine's answer has evolved as Eliza has grown, but the core truth has remained consistent. Because some people aren't strong enough to handle the responsibility of loving someone like you, but that just means we get to love each other twice as much. At 16, Eliza receives her acceptance letter to Columbia University's early admission program, along with a full scholarship that covers tuition, housing, and living expenses. The day the letter arrives, Elaine cries for 20 minutes straight, not from sadness but from overwhelming pride in this extraordinary young woman she's raised. "Pre-med," Eliza announces, her eyes shining with the same determination that has driven her mother for 16 years. "I want to be a cardiac surgeon." "That's incredibly difficult," Elaine says carefully, not wanting to discourage but needing to prepare her daughter for the challenges ahead. "The competition is fierce. The hours are brutal." "Good," Eliza interrupts with a smile that could melt steel. "I learned from watching you that the best things in life require the hardest work. Besides, I want to save lives the way you saved mine." "I didn't save your life, sweetheart. You saved mine." It's true in ways that Eliza won't fully understand for years. This daughter who was rejected before birth became the reason Elaine found strength she never knew she possessed. Every sacrifice, every 18-hour workday, every moment of doubt transformed into purpose when viewed through the lens of giving Eliza the best possible future. By the time Eliza turns 18 and leaves for medical school, Elaine has built something extraordinary from the ashes of her old life. Her art therapy practice has grown from seeing clients in community centers to having her own small office. She specializes in abandonment trauma, helping children and adults process the wounds left by people who should have loved them unconditionally. "You're going to change the world," Sinira Wilde tells her during a gallery opening featuring Elaine's therapeutic art collection, paintings created by clients working through their healing journeys. These pieces, they're not just art. They're proof that broken things can become beautiful. Elaine looks around at the gallery filled with artwork that tells stories of survival, healing, and hope. Each piece represents someone who found their way back to wholeness through creative expression, guided by a therapist who understood their pain because she'd lived it herself. "We all deserve to be seen as beautiful," Elaine replies, thinking of every client who walked into her office believing they were damaged beyond repair. Sometimes we just need someone to help us remember that. The years pass in a blur of Eliza's medical school achievements and Elaine's growing reputation as one of New York's most effective trauma therapists. They talk every week, visit when schedules allow, and maintain the unbreakable bond that sustained them through their hardest years. "I'm doing my residency at Celestial Heart Hospital," Eliza announces during her final year of medical school. "Dr. Kava Thorne, remember him from when I was sick as a baby? He's the chief of cardiology now. He specifically requested me for his team." The name Celestial Heart Hospital sends a chill down Elaine's spine. It's been over 20 years since she gave birth there, since Stuart walked out and left them to build their lives from nothing. She's never told Eliza the full truth about what happened that night, only that her father chose money over family and disappeared from their lives. "Are you sure that's the best choice?" Elaine asks carefully. "There are other excellent programs." "Mama, it's the top cardiac surgery program in the country. Dr. Thorne says I have the potential to be one of the best surgeons of my generation." Eliza's voice carries the confidence of someone who has never doubted her ability to achieve whatever she sets her mind to. "Besides, I want to work where you gave birth to me. It feels like completing a circle." At 24, Dr. Eliza Keary graduates at the top of her residency class and accepts a position as the youngest cardiac surgeon in Celestial Heart Hospital's history. The little girl who was rejected before birth has become the kind of doctor that millionaires would pay fortunes to have operate on them. "I'm so proud of you," Elaine whispers at Eliza's graduation, looking at this brilliant young woman who carries herself with quiet confidence and treats every patient like they're the most important person in the world. "I learned everything from you," Eliza replies, adjusting her white coat with the same grace her mother once showed adjusting ballet costumes. "Strength, compassion, determination. You taught me that love is the most powerful force in the universe." As they stand together in the hospital where their journey began 24 years ago, neither of them knows that fate is already writing the next chapter of their story. Somewhere in the city, Stuart Wallace, now 59, bankrupt and forgotten by the society that once worshipped him, is feeling the first signs of the stroke that will bring him to this very hospital. The man who abandoned his daughter for being worthless is about to discover that she has become invaluable in the only way that truly matters. She has the power to save lives, including the life of the father who never believed she was worth saving. "What's next?" Eliza asks, linking her arm through her mother's as they walk out of the hospital together. "Whatever we want," Elaine replies with the quiet confidence of someone who has already survived the worst life could throw at her. "The world is ours now, baby girl." She has no idea how prophetic those words will prove to be in just 1 year, when her daughter will literally hold the power of life and death over the man who tried to erase them both from existence. The circle is about to close in ways that will test everything they've built together, but it will also prove that some bonds are stronger than betrayal. Some love is more powerful than pride, and some people are destined to rise above every attempt to keep them down. At 25, Dr. Eliza Keary stands at the pinnacle of her profession, ready to face whatever challenges await. She's brilliant, compassionate, and absolutely unbreakable. Everything her father claimed a daughter could never be. And when the moment comes to choose between revenge and redemption, she'll prove that the daughter he called worthless possesses more grace than he ever imagined possible. But that grace will come with a price. She'll save his life while refusing to acknowledge his existence, the most perfect silence ever maintained. The most devastating kindness ever shown, the daughter who will never speak to the father who never deserved her. Chapter 7. The Fall of Kings. The most perfect revenge isn't something you plan. It's something the universe delivers with poetic justice so exquisite that you could never have imagined it yourself. And Stuart Wallace is about to discover that karma has been patiently waiting 25 years to collect what he owes. Sir, your blood pressure is dangerously elevated, and you're showing signs of severe dehydration, the paramedic explains to the grey-haired man slumped in the back of the ambulance, his once powerful frame now frail and trembling. When did you last see a doctor? Stuart Wallace, now 59 and bearing little resemblance to the arrogant millionaire who once ruled Manhattan's financial district, tries to focus through the pounding in his skull that feels like hammers against his brain. "Can't afford doctors anymore," he mumbles, the words bitter as poison in his mouth. 25 years ago, he was worth $50 million and growing. Today, he has $127 in his checking account and lives in a studio apartment that cockroaches would consider beneath their standards. The fall from grace wasn't sudden. It was methodical, surgical, and executed by the very people he'd once considered his closest allies. It started with Tavrix Blackwood, Stuart's former right-hand man, the one who'd toasted the future Wallace heir at that dinner party so long ago, had been systematically embezzling funds for years while positioning himself to take over key accounts. When Stuart finally discovered the theft, Tavrix had already secured enough investor support to force a hostile takeover of Wallace Industries. "Nothing personal, old friend," Tavrix had said during the board meeting that stripped Stuart of everything he'd built. "Just business. Surely you understand." Then came Zerelia Voss, the woman who'd mocked his pregnant wife and encouraged his cruelty toward their unborn daughter, proved to be equally ruthless when it came to destroying him. She'd used insider information gained from their friendship to manipulate stock prices and corner markets, systematically undermining every business venture Stuart attempted after losing his company. "You always said sentiment was weakness," she'd reminded him when her legal team served papers claiming he owed her millions in fabricated consulting fees. "I learned that lesson well." The final blow came from the most unexpected source, his own investors, the people who'd spent years demanding he produce a male heir to carry on the Wallace legacy. When his empire crumbled and his usefulness ended, they abandoned him with the same cold calculation he'd once shown his daughter. "The Wallace name is toxic now," investor Orlixa Sterling had explained, her voice carrying the same casual cruelty she'd once used to mock Elaine's pregnancy. "We're restructuring under new leadership. Your services are no longer required." In 5 years, Stuart lost everything: his company, his fortune, his penthouse, his reputation, and every single person who'd claimed to be his friend or ally. The man who'd believed that money and power were the only things that mattered discovered that both could disappear overnight, leaving behind nothing but the echo of choices that couldn't be undone. "We're approaching Celestial Heart Hospital," the paramedic announces, checking Stuart's vital signs with growing concern. "Sir, do you have any emergency contacts? Family members we should notify?" Stuart's bitter laugh turns into a coughing fit that sprays blood onto his shirt. Family members. The irony is so sharp it cuts. Somewhere in this city is a daughter he rejected before she was born, and a woman he abandoned while she was dying. They probably don't even remember his name, and if they do, it's only as a cautionary tale about the kind of man to avoid. "No family," he rasps, the words scraping his throat like broken glass. "No one." The ambulance pulls up to the same emergency entrance where Elaine fought for her life 25 years ago. As the paramedics wheel Stuart through the automatic doors, he catches a glimpse of the hospital directory. Dr. E. Keary, cardiac surgery, floor 7. E. Keary. The name sends a chill through him that has nothing to do with his medical condition. It's probably a coincidence. Kiri isn't an uncommon name, but something about seeing it here, in this place where his old life ended and his karma began, makes his already irregular heartbeat skip entirely. "We need a cardiologist immediately," shouts the emergency room doctor as Stuart's condition deteriorates rapidly. Patient is experiencing severe chest pain, irregular heart rhythm, and shows signs of massive stroke. Nurse Vailina Astoria, now head nurse of the emergency department, rushes over to assess the new arrival. At 57, she's seen thousands of patients pass through these doors, but something about this man's face triggers a memory that makes her blood run cold. It takes her a moment to place him. 25 years and devastating financial ruin have changed him drastically. But the cruel set of his mouth and the cold emptiness in his eyes are exactly the same as the night he walked out on his dying wife and newborn daughter. "Oh my God," she whispers, her hands trembling as she reads his identification. Stuart Wallace. "You know this patient?" asks Dr. Javalea Price, the emergency physician whose concern shifts to confusion as she notices Vailina's reaction. "I was here the night his daughter was born," Vailina says quietly, her voice heavy with 25 years of suppressed anger. "I watched him abandon his wife and baby because the child wasn't the son he wanted." The emergency room goes silent, except for the beeping of machines and Stuart's labored breathing. Several staff members exchange glances. The story of Stuart Wallace's abandonment has become hospital legend, a cautionary tale told to new nurses about the worst kind of person they might encounter. "His daughter," Dr. Hayes says slowly. "You don't mean Dr. Eliza Kiri? The same little girl he called worthless because she wasn't male," Vailina confirms, her professional composure barely containing her rage. "She's become one of the finest cardiac surgeons in the country, no thanks to him." As if summoned by their conversation, Dr. Caver Thorne appears in the emergency room, his expression grim as he reviews Stuart's chart. At 62, he's the most respected cardiologist in the hospital and has personally mentored dozens of young doctors, including one very special cardiac surgeon. "This patient needs immediate surgery," Dr. Thorne announces, his voice carrying the authority of someone who's spent decades saving lives. "Complex heart repair, possibly multiple procedures. We'll need our best cardiac surgeon." "Dr. Kiri is on call tonight," Vailina says, unable to keep a hint of satisfaction from her voice. "Should I page her?" Dr. Thorne pauses, his eyes moving between Stuart's unconscious form and the chart that tells a story of spectacular downfall. "Dr. Eliza Kiri is indeed our best surgeon. The irony is remarkable." "Sir?" asks Dr. Price, confused by the undercurrent of tension in the room. "Page Dr. Kiri," Dr. Thorne decides, his voice carrying the weight of someone who believes in justice. "Tell her we have a complex cardiac case that requires her expertise. Don't mention the patient's name yet. Let her see for herself." 20 minutes later, Dr. Eliza Kiri strides through the emergency room doors with the confident grace of someone who was born to save lives. At 25, she's already earned a reputation as a surgical prodigy whose hands seem guided by divine intervention when operating on the human heart. She's dressed in navy blue scrubs that make her look both professional and approachable, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes bright with the intelligence that has made her the youngest department head in the hospital's history. Everything about her radiates competence, compassion, and the quiet strength that comes from being raised by a mother who taught her that character matters more than circumstances. "What do we have?" she asks Dr. Thorne, pulling on her gloves as she approaches the patient bed. 59-year-old male, massive cardiac event complicated by stroke symptoms, Dr. Thorne explains, watching her face carefully. "Complex case, will require multiple surgeries over several days if he's going to survive." Eliza moves to the bedside with practiced efficiency, her trained eyes assessing the patient's condition, while her hands check pulse points and neurological responses. She's completely focused on the medical emergency before her, seeing only a human being who needs her skills to survive. His heart rhythm is extremely irregular, she observes, studying the monitor readings. We're looking at potential valve replacement, arterial bypass, possibly a pacemaker. The stroke complications add significant risk factors. Can you save him? Dr. Thorne asks, though he already knows the answer. If anyone can perform medical miracles, it's the young woman whose own life began as an emergency in this very hospital. I can save him, Eliza says with quiet confidence, her hands already moving to prepare for the complex procedures ahead. I'll need to get him to OR immediately. She pauses as she reaches for the patient chart, her eyes falling on the name written in bold letters across the top. Stuart Wallace. For a moment, the emergency room falls completely silent. Eliza stares at the name that has never been spoken aloud in her home, but has shaped every aspect of her existence. The father who abandoned them, the man who saw her as worthless before she was born, the reason her mother never trusted another man, and why she grew up knowing that the only love she could depend on was the fierce, protective love of a mother who chose her over everything else. Dr. Keary, Dr. Thorne says gently, recognizing the moment when past and present collide. Are you all right? Eliza looks up, her professional composure intact, but her eyes reflecting a complexity of emotions that would take years to process. She looks at the man who rejected her before birth, now lying helpless and dependent on the skills she developed through years of determination and excellence. The daughter he never wanted has become the only person who can save his life. Prep or 3, she says calmly, her voice steady despite the magnitude of this moment. We have work to do. As the medical team wheels Stuart towards surgery, none of them know that upstairs in the art therapy wing, Elaine Keary is finishing her late evening session with a young patient. In 30 minutes, she'll receive a call that will bring her face to face with the man who destroyed her life and made her stronger than she ever imagined possible. The circle that began 25 years ago with abandonment and heartbreak is about to close with the most extraordinary irony imaginable. The daughter he called worthless now holds his worthless life in her surgeon's hands. And the question that will define the next few hours isn't whether she can save him. It's whether she will choose to acknowledge his existence while doing it. The daughter who never knew her father is about to meet him for the first time, and she's going to save his life without speaking a single word to him. Chapter 8. The Surgeon's Hands. There are moments when the universe reveals its sense of justice with such breathtaking perfection that even angels pause to witness the poetry of destiny. And Stuart Wallace is about to experience 8 hours of surgical brilliance performed by the daughter he once called worthless, who will save his life without speaking a single word to him. Scalpel, Dr. Eliza Keary says calmly, her voice steady as mountain stone, despite the fact that she's about to cut into the heart of the man who broke her mother's soul 25 years ago. In operating room 3, surrounded by the soft beeping of monitors and the controlled chaos of a level 1 cardiac surgery, Eliza embodies everything that Stuart Wallace claimed a daughter could never be. Powerful, brilliant, commanding respect from every person in the room, and literally holding life and death in her hands. Dr. Keary, says Dr. Tailani Brooks, her surgical resident whose admiration borders on worship, the patient's heart rhythm is becoming increasingly irregular. Should we consider postponing? We proceed, Eliza replies, her hands moving with the precision of a master artist painting on the canvas of human mortality. His condition is too critical for delay. If we don't repair the damage now, he won't survive the night. The irony isn't lost on her. She's fighting to save the life of a man who would have let her die without a second thought. But that's the difference between them. Where Stuart saw weakness, Eliza was taught to see value. Where he saw worthlessness, she was raised to see a human being deserving of care. Beginning arterial bypass, she announces to her surgical team, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone born to heal. Monitor his pressure closely. Through the observation window, Dr. Kavor Thorne watches with the pride of a mentor, seeing his protege perform medical miracles. He's witnessed hundreds of surgeries in his career, but watching Eliza work on the man who abandoned her feels like watching justice itself guide a surgeon's hands. 4 hours into the operation, Stuart's vitals suddenly spike as consciousness briefly returns. Through the haze of anesthesia, he catches a glimpse of his surgeon, a young woman with dark hair and elegant hands who moves with the grace of someone performing a sacred dance. The valve replacement is complete, Eliza reports to her team, unaware that her patient's semi-conscious mind is struggling to process what he's seeing. Beginning pacemaker installation. Stuart's drug-addled brain tries to make sense of the woman saving his life. There's something familiar about her profile, something that triggers memories he's spent 25 years trying to forget. The voice, young but commanding. The hands, delicate but absolutely sure. The way she moves with ballet-like precision that reminds him of someone he once loved and destroyed. Adjust anesthesia levels, the anesthesiologist notes. Patient is showing signs of consciousness. But before Stuart slips back under, he sees her face clearly for the first time. The features that are a perfect blend of the woman he abandoned and the man he used to be before greed consumed his soul. The eyes that hold strength he never possessed and compassion he never learned. His daughter, the realization hits him like a physical blow just as the anesthesia drags him back into darkness. His worthless daughter, the mistake he tried to erase, has become a doctor. Not just any doctor, but the surgeon whose hands are currently saving his life. Surgery complete, Eliza announces 6 hours later, stripping off her gloves with the quiet satisfaction of someone who has just performed a medical miracle. The repairs are holding. He should make a full recovery with proper monitoring. As Stuart is wheeled to the ICU, still unconscious but stable, Eliza finally allows herself to feel the weight of what just happened. She saved him. The man who saw her as worthless before she was born will live because of skills she developed through years of dedication and excellence. Dr. Carey, Nurse Velina Astoria, approaches with a mixture of admiration and concern. "That was incredible work. How are you handling all of this?" "Professionally," Eliza replies, though her hands are trembling slightly as she signs the post-operative reports. "He's a patient who required surgery. I'm a surgeon who performed surgery. That's all there is to it." But even as she says the words, she knows they're not entirely true. This isn't just any patient. This is the ghost that haunted her childhood, the reason her mother never trusted another man, the father who chose pride over love and lost everything that mattered. "I need to call my mother," she says quietly. "She needs to know he's here." 20 minutes later, Elaine Carey stands in the elevator of Celestial Heart Hospital, her heart pounding with the force of 25 years of suppressed emotions. At 49, she's become a respected art therapist whose gentle strength has helped hundreds of people heal from trauma. But right now, she feels like the 24-year-old woman who was abandoned while fighting for her life. "He's stable," Eliza had told her over the phone. "I performed the surgery. He's going to live." The elevator doors open on the ICU floor, and Elaine sees her daughter standing outside Stuart's room, still in her surgical scrubs, looking like an angel of mercy who just saved the devil himself. "How are you?" Elaine asks, wrapping her daughter in a hug that contains 25 years of protection and love. "I'm fine," Eliza says, but her voice cracks slightly. "It's strange, Mama." Looking at him lying there so helpless when he once seemed so powerful and cruel. Through the glass window of his room, They can see Stuart connected to monitors and machines that are keeping him alive. He looks frail, vulnerable, completely dependent on the medical team that includes the daughter he rejected and the woman he abandoned. "You saved his life," Elaine whispers, the words carrying wonder and complexity. The daughter he called worthless saved his worthless life. "I'm a doctor," Eliza replies simply. "I save lives. That's what I do." They stand together in silence, mother and daughter, watching the man who tried to destroy them both. Stuart Wallace, who once commanded boardrooms and inspired fear in his enemies, now lies helpless in a hospital bed, dependent on the very people he deemed unworthy of his love. "He's waking up," Violina reports from inside the room. "Dr. Keary, he's asking for his doctor." Eliza exchanges a look with her mother, 25 years of communication passing between them in a single glance. They've built a life of love and strength from the ashes of his abandonment. Whatever happens next, they'll face it together. "I'll check his vitals," Eliza decides. "Medically speaking, someone should assess his condition." Stuart's eyes flutter open as she enters the room, and the first thing he sees is the woman who just saved his life. Recognition floods his features, not just of her medical skill, but of her identity. His daughter, the child he threw away, who became everything he never believed she could be. "You're," he whispers, her presence making speech difficult, even as his heart monitor shows his emotional reaction. Eliza moves to his bedside with professional efficiency, checking his monitors and adjusting his medication without acknowledging his attempt at personal communication. To her, he is simply the patient, a medical case requiring follow-up care. "Dr. Brooks," she calls to her resident, who enters the room immediately. "Patient is conscious and responsive. Vitals are stable. Continue monitoring every 2 hours and adjust pain medication as needed." "Yes, Dr. Keary," Tailani responds, noting how her mentor speaks about the patient rather than to him. "Should we expect any complications?" "Recovery should be straightforward if he follows medical instructions," Eliza replies, still addressing her staff rather than the man whose desperate eyes follow her every movement. Standard cardiac surgery protocols apply. Stuart stares at her in amazement, trying to reconcile this poised, brilliant young woman with the baby he dismissed as worthless. She's become everything he once claimed only a son could be: successful, commanding, powerful, and infinitely more compassionate than he ever was. "Doctor," he says weakly, trying to get her attention, but Eliza continues reviewing his chart as if he hasn't spoken. "The surgical site looks good," she reports to Tailani. "No signs of infection or complications. Continue antibiotic therapy and monitor for any changes." Her professionalism is absolute, her medical care flawless, but her personal acknowledgement of him as her father is completely absent. She treats him exactly like any other patient, with skill and compassion, but without any recognition of their biological connection. "Please," Stuart whispers, but Eliza is already heading toward the door. "Dr. Brooks will monitor your recovery," she says to the room in general, her words technically addressed to the patient, but delivered with the emotional distance of a weather report. "Follow all medical instructions, and you should make a full recovery." As she walks out of his room and back to her mother's embrace, Stuart Wallace is left alone with the devastating realization that his greatest achievement wasn't the business empire he built. It was the daughter he threw away. The daughter who just saved his life without acknowledging his existence. The daughter who has become everything he never believed she could be. The daughter who will now treat him with perfect medical care and complete personal indifference. Outside his room, mother and daughter stand together, stronger than ever, having faced the ghost of their past and emerged victorious. Whatever comes next, they'll handle it the way they've handled everything else, together, with love, and with the unshakable knowledge that they are worth more than all the money in the world. The man who once held all the power now holds none. The daughter he called powerless now holds his life in her hands. And she's chosen to save him while refusing to see him as anything more than another patient who needed surgery. It's the most profound form of rejection he could ever experience, being saved by someone who won't even acknowledge who he is to her. The silence isn't cruelty. It's the natural consequence of abandonment. The daughter who was never heard will never speak to the father who chose not to listen. Chapter 9. Money Can't Buy Forgiveness. The most pathetic sight in the world is a man who spent his entire life believing that money could buy anything, desperately trying to purchase the one thing that was never for sale: acknowledgement from the daughter he abandoned and recognition from the woman he destroyed. 3 days after his surgery, Stuart Wallace sits propped up in his hospital bed, frantically making phone calls with the desperate energy of a man running out of time to fix 25 years of damage. "I don't care what it costs," he barks into his phone to Draviel Cross, the lawyer who handles his remaining legal affairs. "Liquidate everything, the remaining stocks, the artwork, the watch collection, convert it all to cash." Through his room's window, he can see Dr. Eliza Keary making her morning rounds, moving from patient to patient with the confident grace of someone born to heal. Every time he sees her, the magnitude of what he threw away hits him like a physical blow. This brilliant, accomplished woman is his daughter, and she became everything extraordinary without a single word of encouragement from him. "Sir," Draviel says carefully, "after legal fees and debts, you're looking at maybe $50,000. That's essentially nothing compared to what you once had." "It's enough for a start," Stuart interrupts, his voice carrying a desperation that would have embarrassed him just days ago. "I need trust fund documents, inheritance papers, everything legal to transfer assets to my daughter." What he doesn't say, what he can't admit even to himself, is that he has no idea how to apologize for abandoning a dying woman and rejecting a baby. Money is the only language he's ever spoken fluently, so it's the only apology he knows how to offer. The first delivery arrives that afternoon, a stunning arrangement of white orchids that costs more than most people's monthly rent. The card reads, "For Dr. Eliza Keary, with profound admiration and deepest regrets, S.W." Violina Astoria brings the flowers to Eliza, who's reviewing patient charts in the surgical wing. "These came for you. The delivery man said they're from..." She pauses. "Your patient in room 314. Eliza looks at the elaborate arrangement with the same expression she might give a medical specimen, curious but detached. "They're beautiful," she says calmly. "Please distribute them among the patients who might enjoy them. Mrs. Chen in room 301 loves flowers." "You're not keeping them." "I prefer flowers that come from people who knew me well enough to choose my favorites," Eliza replies, signing another chart with steady hands. "These can brighten someone else's day." The second delivery comes the next morning, a set of car keys attached to a platinum key ring. The accompanying note explains that a brand new Honda Accord is waiting in the hospital parking garage, along with legal documents transferring full ownership to her. A car. Lunthra Ashford, who's visiting Elaine, examines the keys with disbelief. He thinks he can buy his way into your life with a car. Eliza, who's been driving the same reliable Honda Civic that she bought with her part-time work earnings during medical school, hands the keys back to the delivery person without even looking at them. "Please return these to the sender. I have no need for gifts from patients." "But Dr. Keary," the confused delivery man protests, "this is a $30,000 vehicle." "Then it should go to someone who measures relationships in dollars instead of years of presence." Eliza's voice carries the quiet authority of someone who was raised to understand that real value can't be purchased. "I'm not interested in prizes for performing surgery." By the third day, Stuart's desperation reaches fever pitch. He has Draviel draft legal documents creating the Eliza Hope Keary Medical Foundation, a modest trust fund worth his remaining assets, designed to support her career and any future research she might want to pursue. "This is everything I have left," Stuart tells Draviel as he signs the papers with shaking hands. "Every cent, every asset. It's not much, but I want her to have it all." "Sir," Draviel says gently, "perhaps you should speak to her directly before making such dramatic gestures. Financial gifts might not be the approach that will work." But Stuart doesn't know any other approach. He's never learned the language of genuine emotion, never mastered the art of sincere apology. Money has been his solution to every problem, his answer to every need, his replacement for every human connection he was too proud or too frightened to pursue. The foundation documents arrive with the morning mail, along with a letter written in Stuart's careful handwriting. Dr. Keary. "I know that words cannot undo 25 years of absence, but I need you to understand that not a single day has passed without me regretting the biggest mistake of my life. You have become everything I once foolishly believed only a son could be, and infinitely more than I ever imagined possible. This foundation represents everything I have left in this world. It's not much compared to what I once had, but it's simply recognition that you deserved support from the beginning, and if I can't give you the past you should have had, perhaps I can help with your future in some small way. You are the greatest achievement of my life, even though I had nothing to do with who you became. Your mother raised a miracle, and I threw away the privilege of witnessing it. With all the respect and admiration you have earned. S. Wallace." Eliza reads the letter in the break room, surrounded by the controlled chaos of a busy hospital. When she finishes, she sets it down with the same careful precision she uses when handling surgical instruments. "What does it say?" asks Dr. Tylani Brooks, who's become not just her resident, but also her closest friend among the medical staff. "It says he thinks acknowledgement can be deposited into a bank account," Eliza replies, folding the legal documents without reading them. "It says he still doesn't understand that the most valuable things in life can't be purchased." That afternoon, Elaine arrives for her weekly visit to the hospital's art therapy wing, where she conducts sessions for patients dealing with trauma and loss. She finds her daughter waiting in her office, the rejected letter and legal documents spread across the desk like evidence in a trial. "He's trying to buy recognition," Eliza says without preamble. "Cars, flowers, trust funds, everything except the one thing that might actually matter." "Which is?" Elaine asks, though she already knows the answer. "Time, presence, the choice to stay instead of walking away." Eliza's voice carries 25 years of clarity earned through her mother's wisdom. He still thinks in terms of transactions. Give enough money, receive acknowledgement, pay the right price, purchase a relationship. And what do you want to tell him? Eliza is quiet for a long moment, watching through the window as the city bustles with life beyond the hospital walls. Finally, she speaks with the quiet strength that has defined her entire existence. "Nothing. I want to tell him nothing at all." That evening, when Eliza makes her final rounds, she stops by Stuart's room to check his medical progress. He's awake, propped up against pillows, his eyes brightening with desperate hope when he sees her enter. "Doctor," he says quickly, "did you receive my letter? The foundation papers?" Eliza moves to his monitors, checking his vital signs with professional efficiency. Her silence isn't cruel, it's simply complete. She doesn't acknowledge his question, because acknowledging it would require acknowledging him as something more than a patient. "Your recovery is progressing well," she reports to his chart, speaking as if dictating medical notes rather than communicating with him. "Heart function is stable. Surgical site shows no signs of infection." "The money is yours," Stuart continues urgently, his voice cracking with desperation. "Everything I have left. It's not enough to make up for what I took from you, but it's a start." Eliza continues her examination without responding, checking his pulse and adjusting his medication with the same professional detachment she'd show any patient. Her silence isn't anger, it's the natural absence of relationship. "Please," Stuart whispers, his voice breaking, "just say something, anything. Let me know you heard me." Eliza completes her examination and turns toward the door. "Medication adjustments have been made," she says to the room in general, her words technically addressing the patient, but delivered with the emotional involvement of a recorded message. "Nursing staff will continue monitoring overnight." As she walks away, leaving Stuart alone with the devastating weight of her silence, he finally understands that some debts can never be repaid and some opportunities once lost can never be recovered. The daughter he called worthless has proven more valuable than anything he ever built, and she doesn't need his acknowledgement, his money, or his presence at all. The silence isn't punishment, it's indifference, the worst possible response to someone desperate for attention, being treated as if they don't exist in any meaningful way. For Stuart Wallace, who spent his life demanding acknowledgement and respect, being professionally ignored by his accomplished daughter is a fate worse than hatred. Hatred would at least prove he matters to her. Silence proves he doesn't matter at all. Chapter 10. The Heart That Never Forgot. The most profound truth about human hearts is that they can break and heal simultaneously, love and grieve in the same breath, and sometimes the greatest act of mercy is choosing to save someone who never chose to save you, while never speaking a single word to acknowledge their existence. Code Blue, Room 314. Code Blue, Room 314. The alarm pierces through Celestial Heart Hospital at 3:17 a.m., jolting Dr. Eliza Keary from the on-call room where she's been catching a few hours of sleep between surgeries. She's been treating Stuart Wallace like any other patient for the past week, but medical emergencies don't respect personal boundaries or complicated family histories. "What's his status?" she asks, as she rushes into Stuart's room, her professional instincts overriding every emotional complication. "Massive cardiac event," reports Dr. Tylani Brooks, who's been monitoring the night shift. "His surgical repairs are failing, and he's showing signs of complete heart block. Without immediate intervention, he'll be dead within the hour," Eliza finishes, studying the monitors that tell the story of a heart giving up its fight. The irony isn't lost on her. The man whose heart was too closed to love his family is now literally dying from a heart that won't function. Dr. Keary, Nurse Violina Astoria, appears at her elbow, her voice carrying 25 years of complicated history. "Dr. Thorne is in surgery with another emergency case. You're the only cardiac surgeon available." The weight of the moment settles on Eliza's shoulders like a lead blanket. She could transfer him to another hospital, claim conflict of interest, find any number of medical excuses to avoid this choice. But as she looks at Stuart's unconscious form, she sees not the man who abandoned her, but simply another human being whose life hangs in the balance. "Prep or two," she says quietly, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she's about to do. "We're going in." As the medical team wheels Stuart toward surgery, Eliza makes a decision that will haunt her forever. She stops by his bedside table to gather his personal effects for safekeeping. Among his few possessions, she finds something that stops her heart completely. A worn manila folder, thick with newspaper clippings that span decades. With trembling hands, she opens it to find hundreds of articles about her life, her high school valedictorian speech, her acceptance to Columbia University, her graduation from medical school, her residency achievements, every surgical innovation she's pioneered, every life she's saved that made the medical journals. Each clipping is carefully preserved, dated in Stuart's handwriting, with margin notes that make her eyes fill with tears. She got my determination, but Elaine's compassionate heart. I would have been so proud to call her my daughter. She's saving lives while I destroyed everything I touched. How do I apologize for throwing away perfection? At the bottom of the folder, she finds a stack of returned letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Elaine and Eliza Keary at various addresses throughout the city. Every envelope is stamped, "Return to sender, no forwarding address." "Dr. Keary," Velina calls softly, "we're ready for you in surgery." Eliza looks up, her professional composure intact, but her understanding fundamentally changed. "He tried to find us, multiple times over the years. We kept moving, changing our names slightly, building new lives. He was looking for us." "Does it change anything?" Velina asks gently. Eliza considers the question as she scrubs in for what might be the most important surgery of her career. Does it change anything to know that Stuart spent years trying to undo his greatest mistake? Does it matter that he kept every article about her achievements like a father who was proud but too ashamed to make contact? "It changes my understanding," she whispers, "but not my choice." The surgery is a nightmare of complications that would challenge the most experienced cardiac surgeon. Stuart's heart is failing on multiple levels, not just the physical damage from his recent crisis, but years of stress, regret, and what can only be described as a broken heart in the most literal sense. "I need more suction here," Eliza calls out, her hands working with supernatural precision as she attempts repairs that border on miraculous. His heart tissue is incredibly damaged. It's like he's been dying slowly for years. 4 hours into the procedure, as Eliza works to install a complex artificial valve system, Stuart's heart suddenly stops completely. The monitors flatline, and for a moment that seems to stretch into eternity, the operating room falls silent except for the mechanical sound of the bypass machine. "He's in full cardiac arrest," Dr. Brooks announces, reaching for the defibrillator. "Wait," Eliza says, her hand still inside Stuart's chest cavity. "I can feel something." She works with an intensity that seems to channel every emotion she's ever felt about this man. The curiosity about what might have been, the understanding of his regret, and underneath it all, the unshakable knowledge that her mother raised her to be better than revenge. "Come on," she whispers to the silent heart in her hands. "You don't get to quit now. Not after keeping every newspaper clipping. Not after trying to find us for years. Fight!" And incredibly, impossibly, the heart responds. First a flutter, then a weak beat, then gradually the strong, steady rhythm of a heart that has remembered how to live. "He's back," Dr. Brooks breathes in amazement. "Dr. Keary, you literally brought him back from death." As they close Stuart's chest and wheel him to recovery, Eliza feels the weight of 25 years transforming in her chest. She's done everything her mother taught her to do. She's been excellent, compassionate, strong, and ultimately forgiving in the way that only someone raised with unconditional love can be. 3 days later, Stuart wakes up to find Eliza checking his monitors during her morning rounds. This time, he doesn't try to speak to her directly. He's learned that she won't acknowledge him personally, but he watches her work with the desperate intensity of a man trying to memorize something precious. "Patient's recovery is excellent," Eliza reports to Dr. Brooks, who's accompanying her on rounds. "Heart function has stabilized completely. He should make a full recovery." "When can he be discharged?" Brooks asks. "Within the week, assuming no complications," Eliza replies, still speaking about Stuart rather than to him. "Standard post-operative care protocols apply." Stuart listens to them discuss his future as if he's not in the room, and for the first time, he understands what his silence cost him 25 years ago. The absence of acknowledgement, the professional distance, the way important decisions about his life are made without consulting him. This is exactly what he did to his daughter before she was born. "Doctor," he says quietly, not expecting a response but needing to try one last time. Eliza pauses in her chart review but doesn't turn toward him. For just a moment, Stuart thinks she might speak to him directly. Instead, She addresses her resident. Ensure the patient follows all discharge instructions. Recovery depends on strict adherence to medical protocols. It's a response that's perfectly appropriate, medically sound, and completely impersonal. She's treating him exactly like what he made himself, a stranger who happened to need surgery. 6 months later, Stuart Wallace sits in his small apartment reading a medical journal article about breakthrough cardiac surgery techniques developed by Dr. Eliza Keary. The article includes a photo of her receiving an award for surgical innovation, and Stuart studies her face like a man trying to memorize a blessing he'll never deserve. He's used his remaining time to establish a modest scholarship fund for children from single-parent families who want to pursue medical careers. He volunteers at homeless shelters and uses his business expertise to help people rebuild their lives. He's not trying to buy forgiveness anymore. He's trying to become someone worthy of the second chance he's been given. But he's never tried to contact Eliza again. He understands now that some relationships can't be rebuilt, only respected from a distance. The letter he writes that evening will never be sent. My dearest daughter, you saved my life twice, once with your hands and once with your silence. You showed me a kind of mercy I never showed you, the grace of treating someone with professional excellence while refusing to pretend that history can be erased. I kept every article about your achievements because I wanted to know who you became without me. You became extraordinary. You became everything I never believed a daughter could be, and infinitely more than I deserved to witness. Your silence wasn't cruelty, it was the perfect response to abandonment. You gave me exactly what I gave you, nothing personal, nothing intimate, nothing that acknowledged our connection. I understand now that love isn't something you can demand or purchase or inherit. It's something you earn through presence, through choice, through staying when leaving would be easier. I failed that test 25 years ago. You passed it with perfect marks when you saved the father who never chose to be your father. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. Thank you for proving that the daughter I called worthless was worth more than everything I ever built. Thank you for never speaking to me. It was the most powerful thing you could have said. With profound respect and undeserved gratitude, the patient you saved. The letter joins dozens of others in his desk drawer, words that will never be spoken, apologies that will never be delivered, a father's love that arrived 25 years too late. In the cardiac surgery wing of Celestial Heart Hospital, Dr. Eliza Keary finishes another successful operation, her hands steady and her heart at peace. She's built a life of purpose and meaning, saving lives and healing hearts with skills that honor the mother who raised her and the profession that chose her. She never thinks about the man whose life she saved twice without speaking to him once, because that's what strength looks like. Moving forward without looking back, building something beautiful from the ashes of abandonment, and proving that the greatest victory isn't revenge, it's indifference. The heart that never forgot how to love had taught the heart that never learned how to stay. And in the end, silence was the most eloquent response of all. The daughter he called worthless had proven invaluable. The father who walked away had learned too late that some doors, once closed, never open again. But the woman who saved him did it anyway, not because he deserved it, but because that's who she chose to become. End.